Your nightly news with Tom Johnson begins now.
Good evening. Susan Neal Frasers' new bid for freedom won't be heard until at least next year, Hobart Supreme Court has heard. She's launched a second appeal against her murder conviction in the landmark use of Tasmania's new right to appeal laws. Louise Hedger has this report.
Today was another small step in the marathon that is Susan Neal Frasers' legal fight to overturn her conviction. Supporters turning up at court for another hearing today, one of many in this long-running case. They say it's the legal process that's draining for Neal Fraser, but are feeling hopeful for her and her bid for freedom.
She's, of course, is always worried about it, but she's fairly positive that in the end it'll all come good.
The now 65-year-old is serving a 23-year sentence after being convicted of murdering her partner Bob Chappell on his yacht in January 2009. Sue Neal Fraser has always maintained her innocence but had exhausted all avenues to appeal her conviction.
She's missing out on all this wonderful time with her grandchildren. And when she comes out, she'll be an old age pensioner.
That was until new laws which were introduced in Tasmania, which meant she could apply to have her conviction overturned if there was fresh and compelling evidence. Under those new laws, today's action began. Her lawyers, one who appeared via video link here today, are appealing on the fact that they say there's evidence that homeless girl Megan Vass was on board when Mr Chappell was attacked and that there are issues with the DNA testing and a crime scene reconstruction used in the original trial. Today's directions hearing in front of Justice Helen Wood heard the appeal is not expected to be heard this year and its length, when it does, is unknown. Susan Neal Fraser's lawyers will now prepare documents to provide to the court, with the next directions hearing set for November.
US authorities have called out Tasmania's poppy industry for its part in the country's deadly opioid crisis. The state of Oklahoma has successfully sued health giant Johnson & Johnson for fueling the misuse of pain medication made from Tasmania's raw opium.
Tasmanian fields generate half the world's supplies of legal opium poppies, a large industry that's facing a dramatic decline as authorities here and overseas battle what's been called the opioid crisis. In the US, it's estimated 130 people die each day due to misuse of opioids like pain medication.
The opioid crisis has ravaged the state of Oklahoma.
The situation's so bad, the US state of Oklahoma sued medical giant Johnson & Johnson. The company slapped with an $845 million fine for causing a public nuisance.
Misleading marketing and promotion of opioids created a nuisance that those actions compromised the health and safety of thousands of Oklahomans.
Johnson & Johnson built its billion-dollar brand out of greed and on the backs of pain and suffering of innocent people.
Oklahoma's Attorney General singling out Tasmanian alkaloids as a key supplier.
That the root of this entire crisis began in Tasmania and New Jersey with Johnson & Johnson. And they can't laugh anymore. They can't call this case baseless anymore.
Johnson & Johnson says its former affiliate Tasmanian Alkaloids complied with regulations and quotas, and as a supplier, it had no role in manufacturing, sales or marketing of the finished products. Tightening restrictions on medications are having a dramatic impact on poppy farming, with the number of hectares harvested here almost halving over 4 years.
We have in Australia, and indeed Tasmania, the strictest regulations around growing poppies here in Tasmania.
Opioids are a growing problem here too. A new report from the Pennington Institute suggesting they're the leading cause of unintentional overdose deaths, a total of 30 recorded in Tasmania in 2017.
The people who are most at risk of having an accidental overdose are those who are on prescription medications.
For its part, Johnson & Johnson says the drug industry is heavily regulated and it will fight back.
We have many strong grounds for appeal, and we intend to pursue those vigorously.
Michael Breen, 7 Tasmania News.
The parents of a young man who was run down and killed by a driver in 2005 say they're stunned he's been released on parole just over halfway through his sentence. Pauline and Howard Goldthorpe have labelled the decision an injustice. The cruel and senseless death of Victorian Matthew Goldthorpe in 2005 has felt like a life sentence for his parents Pauline and Howard. The news his killer had been granted parole just 14 years into his 25-year jail term only adds to their pain.
I don't forgive him as such. I never will. I think that if God offers the chance to offer the other cheek, that's for God to do, but not for me. And I simply don't feel anything for him.
Matthew had just arrived in Launceston to study marine biology when he was run down not once but twice after asking for directions. The driver, Shane Anthony Main, said he did it for fun. Pauline and Howard say his early release is an injustice.
Rehabilitation is an important factor when it comes to sentencing. But in this case, when it comes to murder, punishment just has to be the prime deterrent. It has to be the prime factor, and that hasn't been done in this case.
Pauline was asked to provide a victim impact statement to the parole board earlier this year.
That was just such a joke. My impact statement was just useless because it wasn't going to change anything. They'd already made up their minds about him going out.
Today, Matthew Goldthorpe's family sat in court alongside the family of his convicted murderer.
Pauline says the hardest part since that day was when Mr. Main was given leave to visit his mother for Mother's Day last year.
What's wrong with her going to prison to visit him?
But their love for Matthew remains as strong as ever.
To us, he was very special. Not because he was our son, but because how we treated his family and people around him.
Tasmania's electricity connection to other states is heading for another prolonged outage. Basslink tripped over the weekend and was hoped to be back in service today, but the operator now says the issue could take until mid-October to fix. A fault in the cable at its Victorian transition station is being blamed for the issue. A Midlands farmer is calling for the deer hunting season to be extended as feral population numbers rise. The state government is preparing to begin aerial surveying next month to get a better picture of how many are roaming the state.
George Gatenby has a constant battle on his hands when it comes to wild deer.
Historically, we've seen mobs of 30 to 40, which have increased to sort of 80 to 100 at any one time.
The Campbelltown Merino sheep farmer currently culls around 200 fallow deer a year, the most he ever has, and says he has good reason to, with them wreaking havoc on his property.
Financially, it's cost us anything from $30,000 to $60,000 from damage to fences or crops, mainly grazing damage from grazing crops at critical stages or when they're maturing, and that really hits our bottom line.
The state government is about to begin aerial surveying and camera trapping to determine more accurate numbers in the wild. The statewide census is in response to the 2017 Legislative Council inquiry into Tasmanian deer populations.
The census will form a great deal of information as well as how we go about managing the populations forward.
George would like to see the hunting season opened up to give landholders like himself the ability to cull fallow deer all year round. There are predictions the state could have up to 1 million wild deer by 2050, but Tasmania's Wilderness Society says hunting isn't the answer.
There definitely needs to be a better balance between conservation, managing these invasive feral animals, and recreational hunting. At the moment, the government seems to like the idea that hunting these animals will fix the problem, but it won't.
Letitia Wallace, 7 Tasmania News.
Police have targeted roads across the state in an operation cracking down on road safety in rural areas. And there's a good reason why they're targeting remote areas, with new figures showing where serious crashes are more likely to occur.
Officers out in force in Richmond conducting breath tests, licence and registration checks and vehicle safety inspections. This part of a national day of action for rural road safety, targeting drivers doing the wrong thing.
Although there's fines in terms of demerit points or monetary fines, the real penalty is the loss of life.
Traffic operations occurring across the state ensuring that drivers are being safe in rural areas. In Lilydale, police targeted known hotspots for traffic incidents.
We've had a bit of a bad run here in the last 18 months where we've had 3 fatal accidents. We have increased our patrols in this area.
Police increasing the focus on rural roads because that's where most of Tasmania's serious crashes occur.
Over the past 5 years, statistics show that 62% of road fatalities and serious injuries occur on rural roads.
Rural roads are often much windier, longer and subject to weather conditions that can cause issues for motorists.
The message is simple. Pay attention, be aware and drive to the conditions.
Road safety is everybody's responsibility, and whilst we certainly want to shine the spotlight on the issue today, it is something that we should be thinking about 365 days a year.
Ebony Ablett, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmania's extended ban on genetically modified crops could be undone by a loophole in new federal regulations. There are moves to block the changes, but some experts say we should be embracing new crop technologies.
Matthew Evans's farming operations are known around the world. He says Tasmania's GMO-free status helps open doors to new markets.
Is the ultimate in terms of global branding, because there's very few places that are isolated in an island that have a blanket ban.
The moratorium on genetically modified crops was recently extended by the state government for 10 years. But Andrew Wilkie and the Greens are concerned possible changes to national regulations could become a loophole.
Developing technologies in the GMO space that the government is trying to, in effect, remove those technologies from the definition.
If you put on a packet, the result of gene editing technology, punters wouldn't buy it.
The editing process allows modification of the DNA of organisms, changing the plant structure. Some experts say they should be welcomed.
To make plant more tolerant to drought or to flooding, why not? We're doing what nature is doing naturally by mutations, we just do it quicker.
Deputy Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe says their position hasn't changed.
Gone it alone and will continue to do so to defend our brand.
Will Hodgman needs to get off his butt and pick up the phone and say to Scott Morrison, not good enough, do not change the definition of...
John Hunt, 7 Tasmania News.
With this year's Tour de Cure just around the corner, 3 Tasmanian cyclists are getting a head start on their fundraising. The trio has sold out a dinner featuring special guest Elvis ahead of the ride, which raises money for cancer research.
I have a work colleague whose little girl, who's only 6, is suffering leukaemia, and you hear people who have been diagnosed with breast cancer all the time, friends, family, whatever, and you think, that's why I'm out here doing it.
Riders will cover nearly 500 kilometres from Devonport to Hobart via the East Coast when the ride takes place in November. Amoona Kindergarten will receive much-needed upgrades to improve ageing facilities. Bowen Road Primary will receive $1.4 million for a new kindergarten and 2 flexible learning centres. It's also hoped to reduce noise from the highway.
We hope to have a buffer from the Brooker Highway because, as you can hear, there's a lot of traffic noise.
The classrooms being replaced were built prior to World War II. Tasmanian students are getting a window into trades as part of National Skills Week, a training centre in Sorell opening its doors to Year 10 students for a fair today, showing off vet, certificate and apprenticeship options. Industries like agriculture, construction and hospitality were on show.
And hopefully by having days like today, the students that may not be sure where they want to go can come along, have a look and think, well, yeah, I'd like to do construction or animal studies or agriculture.
National Skills Week is an initiative aiming to highlight industries such as construction and those that are facing skills shortages. Well, now for another look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Bank of Us, Tasmania's customer-owned bank. The Australian stock market has moved higher as the US and China took steps to reduce trade tensions. The ASX 200 index rose 31.1 points. While a short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 67.59 US cents and 60.88 European cents.
The Tasmania Devils are on the hunt for a new coach, with Adrian Fletcher departing the role following the side's inaugural NAB League season. And the pressure is on AFL Tasmania to find the right replacement to help give our most promising talent the best chance of being drafted.
It was a challenging year for the Tassie boys in the country's premier under-18 competition, but Fletcher says a lack of results has nothing to do with his decision to depart, with the Tasmanian Football Hall of Famer returning to Brisbane to be with his kids.
One's 15 in the Lions Academy, and my daughter plays footy as well, so I wanted to get back and help them live their dreams.
After finishing second last on the ladder, the Devils got another chance to play finals in last weekend's wildcard round. And despite falling short by just 6 points, Fletcher says he's happy with where the group's at.
Our boys stood up for this state. We probably lost 5 by under a goal. And, if a bit of luck went our way, we probably could have won those games.
The former AFL recruit, who played 231 games at the highest level, also denying rumours of tension with players' parents regarding his coaching style, as AFL Tasmania now begins the process of finding a worthy replacement.
If you want to be drafted, you've got to set a high standard. As a group, we raised the bar. We made sure that they understood that they'd be critiqued on game time. But I love the players. They love the environment.
To hockey, and Premier League dark horse side University are preparing for a prelim final showdown with the Northwest Grads after claiming last weekend's elimination final against Canterbury in a tense sudden death shootout.
We certainly felt like we owed them one after they beat us in round 16. They were pretty sure they'd ended our season then, but we've sort of come back from the dead, and it was nice to finish them off.
The winner will meet Derwent in the grand final following their 3-2 win over the Grads in a rain-affected semi.
Turf flooded so badly that the glue from underneath the surface sort of made a bowl in the centre of the field. So at three-quarter time, the talk was that the game was going to be called off. But thankfully, common sense prevailed and we were able to use turf too.
And it could be a premiership double for the club, with its women's side also straight through to the decider after a cruisy win over OHA.
I think it was really pleasing. We've kind of taken some really good, important steps the last, particularly 4 or 5 weeks, and we've just gotten better and better as we've gone on.
OHA get a shot at redemption this Saturday in a prelim clash against Diamondbacks, who ended Northwest Grad's finals campaign with a 2-0 win.
Meantime, a group of young Launceston dancers has cheered their way to success overseas, with the All-Star Cheer and Dance School taking out second place at the Ministry of Cheer Championship in Wellington, New Zealand, in their first ever international competition. The group has now been invited to compete at the 2020 Aloha Classic in Hawaii next April.
Good evening. Fingal produced a frosty -2 to start us off today, while our warmest was an above-average 17 at Friendly Beaches. Hobart, Launceston and Burnie 15, Devonport a top of 14 degrees. A few showers, mainly over the west, with Mount Reid following up last night's 31mm with another 7 today. St Helens 16 degrees, King Island, Smithton, Grove and Ouse 15, Flinders Island 14, Low Head and Strawn 13 degrees. Low-level cloud over the state today, but plenty of breaks over the north and northeast. Cloud with the oncoming cold front extends across waters to our southwest. Low cloud lies over the Bight as well as Tasmania and through the eastern seaboard. Tomorrow the high remains over the Bight with the front crossing Tasmania and Victoria. The low pressure troughs continue over the mainland. Strong northwesterly winds to start us off tomorrow ahead of a south to southwesterly change during the late morning with an expected decrease during the evening, swells to 5 metres. Gale warning for waters between Tasman Island and Sandy Cape, a strong wind warning for remaining coastal waters and the southwest lakes. We also have a warning for sheep graziers for the northwest coast, the upper Derwent and the southeast. Hobart, tomorrow 13 degrees with showers easing, showers for Geeston on 12 and 11 for Bothwell. Launceston's forecast is morning showers clearing, 13 the maximum after 7 overnight, 7 as well for Devonport with morning showers, a top of 13 and 12 the high for Cressy. Burnie, morning showers, winds easing later, 13 the top, 13 also for Curry on King Island with Strawn on 12. And for St Helens tomorrow, a top of 14 degrees with a few showers, morning showers for Swansea, 13 the high for Orford. On Thursday, fine apart from a possible morning shower over the south coast, a cool start by the looks too. Another tingly start to Friday ahead of a mostly fine sunny day, and on Saturday a few light showers developing over the northwest, otherwise fine and partly cloudy. 28 and sunny in Perth, showers for Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney and also in Brisbane. Cloudy in Hobart, 12 degrees at the moment, 11 degrees in Launceston and 11 degrees in Devonport. Tonight's energy saving tip from the staff at Aurora Energy: use an efficient shower head that reduces the water flow, saving all your heating costs. And we better wish Jo Palmer a speedy recovery from her bout of cold urticaria, which has brought about some excessive clinomania. I hope she's back tomorrow night. Tom, you've got better things to do than this.
Well, I'm sure everyone will welcome her back too. That's fantastic. Well, that's all your news for now. We'll leave you with tonight with pictures of Taronga Western Plains Zoo's newest resident, a baby white rhino born just 9 days ago. Adorable. Thanks for joining us. A very good evening. Good night.